So this is part 2 of what we covered earlier. So what I'm planning to cover off this time is just a quick recap, talk a little bit about polar alignment in EKOS, and then go into a bit of detail understanding the capture stuff. So you can look at all the options, how to frame images, and the all important, how do we create sequences, which I think a lot of the people, who have been here in this group and the first light group, I think we're struggling with. And if we get time, we'll go through automating sequences. So coming back to the recap, it's stuck. Okay, so yes, so the quick recap is this. We know the KStars is, as a client, is available on Windows, Mac OS, Linux. And of course, the Indie server just runs on Linux. So that means it runs on the Raspberry Pi and Mac OS as well. Just a quick, we've seen what all it can control. It seems to be pretty much able to do most of it. And then what we covered off last time was also how to use the Raspberry Pi for imaging, a quick walkthrough. And then we were talking about the ASI 224 and how I use it for imaging DSOs. So, one sec, see my screen. Just give me a sec while how do I change this? Oh, mouse is stuck. Yep. Okay. Yeah. So what we were talking about is how do we connect? Okay. And one simple option is you either go straight using the Wi-Fi or you cable it and run it. So basically on this device here, can you guys see my pointer?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, so on this device could be anything like an iPad, a laptop, your phone, anything. So basically you could run VNC or a web server, web browser, and then connect to the Astroberry or whatever Raspbian OS which you've got on the RPA. So basically that runs the KStars and EKOS and the Indie server, and all the device drivers run off that one. So this guy is doing all the grunt work. All you're doing is just mirroring the screen and seeing that. And that I think a lot of people use. And the other option is this, which is what I do. So I run KStars from here on my laptop. And all that this guy, the Raspberry Pi, does is it runs the Indie server and the drivers. So it's not doing much at all. I, of course, try to run PhD2 as well on the Raspberry Pi. So the 2 bits that are running off the Pi are PhD2 and the Indie servers. And then I've got this cable which was running there. One change has happened, so let's cover off the summary. So that's what I was explaining. So that's option 1, which I showed first. And then option 2 is what I've just discussed. Any questions on this one so far?
On your first option, did you still have PhD2 on the Raspberry Pi?
Yeah, you can still have
Yeah,
PhD2 on Raspberry Pi. Everything runs off the Raspberry Pi in the first option.
Yeah. Okay, Tom.
So in this option, you could still run PhD2 here as well. So it's not that you can't run it, but then it'll struggle to connect, right? Because the device is running off this one. So it's not going to find the device attached to this guy. So it doesn't make sense. But what I can do is I can run the internal guider on EKOS from here. I don't need PhD2, then I can run the internal guider from here, and that guy works perfectly.
So is there is there any advantage in option 2? Because I can't really see one at the minute.
It's just the amount of grunt that's there. And the advantage here for me is I store all my images here, not there.
Okay.
So, Pramod, what operating system does K-Stars run under?
It runs under Windows, Mac,
Oh, it does run under
Linux.
Windows. Yeah. Oh, right. Okay.
All three.
Yeah.
So as a client, it runs on all three. It's just the Indie server which needs this Linux base. So you're fine. In fact, I think if you go to the StellarMate OS, which I know the author sells for, I think, $50 or something. He's got a phone version of EKOS as well. So you could run it off your tablets. So yeah, you've got several options there. So whereas the one option I'm talking about is the free one. But if you pay those $50,
both these options are free, right?
Yeah. What I've spoken about so far is free. Yeah. So if you opt for StellarMate on this one as an OS and you shell out $50, fine, you get a few more little bits. The developer is the same, the guy who writes EKOS and K-Stars. So he's got this business on the side, and he's got this as a fully free option as well. Some guy in Kuwait who's one of the primary developers. So this is what I've done now, is because I had all these wires running through into my house. So I've got one of these Wi-Fi extenders. Just got a plug point fitted outside. I plug this guy in there, run an Ethernet cable. It comes with an Ethernet port. I just run the Ethernet cable, and this whole section is running off that. That means I can close my doors, windows, everything, and I can sit here happily and control this. That's my latest update. Any questions?
What type extender? Using an external extender?
Yeah, no, it's a normal extender. It's the what's this? Netgear. It used to be inside my house.
Oh, it's still inside your house. Yeah, okay.
No, at the moment it's outside my house. I just take it out, plug it in on the external point. And if you've got a covered plug point, then yeah, you can do it there as well.
Right, so the plug point's not cutting off the Wi-Fi.
No, it's not.
When it's covered, because that's just the picture obviously is an internal one, which wouldn't really like working out in the in the brain.
Yeah, it's a normal plug point, one of those external plug points you get with a plastic cover.
Yeah,
that's what I use. Anyway, I'm not one of those guys who's got this unit sitting there all the time, right? So when I dismantle my scope, I dismantle this fellow as well. So I bring this whole lot in. That's it. So I don't have this challenge of keeping it outside and making it waterproof and all that stuff. You could do it, I'm guessing. Any questions?
No, to answer that point, Pramod, yes, you could certainly just mount an external antenna that would then be wired through into something like that internally. That would be another possibility if you wanted to have.
Sure, there are plenty of options,
Yeah.
Bob. Because I know some people put a because the Wi-Fi on the Raspberry Pi is not great. So some people put a dongle with the Wi-Fi and then connect straight to it. So there are many options available for people.
But if you're using your option 2, then you do need a very good connection. If you're using option 1, all you're doing is supervising what's going on.
Yeah.
So it's less critical if you're using option 1.
Correct.
You might just lose supervision of what's going on, that's all.
Correct. So in my case, I need a good connection because I need these images to come back to me. So it is critical that my connectivity from here to back here is good. But yes, there are options of doing both. We can cover that in the capture module.
If you're running option 1, what's the capacity of images you can store on the Pi?
As big as your SD card.
Yeah, I'm just thinking in terms
or
of.
Stick another USB drive, whatever.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking
attach.
because of the amount of gigabytes you can generate with a CMOS camera these days.
Yeah, there's no limit as such. It's just what you attach to the Pi.
Just put a big memory stick in the Raspberry Pi.
Yeah, just stick a massive memory stick in it. You're done.
And at the end of the night, just pull the memory stick out and bring it indoors.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Stick it on your whatever your processing machine is going to be. At the moment, I save mine on the built-in SD card that's also running the whole Raspberry Pi operating system, and I've never got anywhere near it.
Right. So what size is that you've got on it?
Might be a 32.
Right.
I think.
Okay.
So you get 128 GB and so on, right? On an SD card, right? It's 15, 20 quid. So what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you protect all that lot from dew and moisture ingress?
In
the Pi itself?
Yeah, the Pi and the extender. Yeah.
In
Is
my
that an
case,
issue?
No issue. I haven't had any issues because I don't leave it overnight. Point number one.
But just if it stays hot enough, it might protect itself.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah,
Is
I
that,
think.
is that, oh, right. That's how it does. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, both of them generate enough heat to. I haven't seen dew ever develop on either of these.
Yeah, I also orientate mine vertically with all those USB ports facing downwards.
Right.
Right.
So there's on the opposite end of the case, there is, I think the only opening is a tiny little slit where you put the memory card in.
Yeah, correct. And that's not exposed at all, isn't it? It's right under the covers, literally.
Yeah. But it does, you can feel it is quite warm. So I don't think there's a problem with dew. I think it'll self-heat enough to keep the dew off.
Right. Okay. Okay.
And I've got a plastic case as well. So if it's metal, I think you have more chance of catching dew. Whereas plastic, I think you're better off, probably. That's my guess. I don't know. But so far I haven't collected dew, even though the scope has collected dew.
Yep. Agree with that.
Perfect. So coming to the polar alignment assistant, right? So the way EKOS works, and I think that's the same way as SharpCap and a lot of the other tools do it, right? So it's pretty simple. It basically takes 3 images, 1, 2, and 3, whichever direction. You can ask it to go west or east. So it basically, and you can give a number of degrees you want it to rotate. So it basically just takes 3 images, does a plate solve, figures out what this rotation is, and then comes up with this lovely vector, which shows you how far you are away from true north. So that's what it looks like on screen. So you get a little vector. You can choose a star, any star which you can follow, and then you'll have to basically start moving your scope or mount, adjusting the azimuth and altitude knobs and all that to get this to go right there. And that's how it works. It's pretty simple.
Does it have to be pointing north?
It doesn't have to be pointing north. We'll cover that shortly.
Okay.
The closer it is to north, the accuracy is better. But if you can't see the North Pole, well, it doesn't matter. You can point it somewhere else and start it going in that circle. Pretty straightforward. You can do this as long as the plate solve works, you're good. So, which is what sometimes I find, because the number of stars around the polar region are not great. I find if I use my guide scope, I can get a better chance of plate solving. But yeah, both of them work equally fine.
Then your guide scope has to be exactly aligned, I guess.
No, it doesn't have to be, because it's just describing an arc, right? So it's not the scope or the guide scope which is the measurement. The measurement is for the axis on this guy, right? It's this axis. So it's got nothing to do with what you've got up here.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. All right. That took a little bit of computing power on my brain, but yeah, okay. I think I understand that.
If you've got cone error between the two, you'll still have an offset.
Yeah, but your plate solve will.
Your plate solve will do your axis alignment based on either your guide scope or your mode. However, if the two aren't if the two aren't aligned, parallel, thank you. If they aren't aligned, then because of cone error, then you'll still have an offset in there. John may shoot me down now. I can see him working on that one.
I think
is that true? Go
on. I'm not by no means certain. But off the top of my head, I think any cone error in the system would be equivalent to just pointing your telescope to a slightly different offset from the Polaris. And I think the arc would still tell you what the telescope axis was doing, and where you're actually pointing the sky doesn't matter. So I don't think cone error would actually cause any trouble for the polar alignment. It may well cause you problems when you're trying to point at things either side of the meridian, and you'll get an offset, but I don't think it will affect the polar alignment.
Yeah, so you're saying
as well.
So if it would show up as a tracking error and require greater guiding correction.
No, not a tracking error.
No.
I just a pointing error when you switch
from
one side of the meridian to the other.
Go-to bit will suffer.
Okay, all right.
But then you can plate solve and sync. And if you plate solve and sync, you've sorted your offset.
You'll improve your mount model as you plate solve and sync more objects, isn't it? So.
Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah. All right.
Just imagine if this guide scope was pointing like this, right?
Yeah.
So it would still trace an arc like that.
Oh, it's still trace an arc, certainly.
Yeah. So it doesn't matter which way it is pointing, it's still going to trace the same arc.
Yeah. And
After all, you
it
actually
can-
don't want it pointing towards the pole. You need it to have an offset from.
You need to have
Yeah.
an offset, so it's describing an arc, not a little tiny fellow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the center of that arc is always going to be the true NCP.
Yeah, should be.
Well, sorry,
You're aiming for that, isn't it? Yeah.
Exactly.
And
Well, I'm glad I helped us all work through that one.
Yes, I think it was a good sort of bullet point to talk around to better understand it all.
So it's like this, right? So this is what I guess, Keith, you were asking, right? So you just point to any star which you know you can see. You can't see Polaris, right? So that's hidden. But you point to something else which you can see, and you know if you describe an arc like that, it won't get hidden somewhere, right? Or if you know the arc works this way, then fine, you ask it to go that way, right? So it's up to you. You just pick, let's say we pick an object that's there, a star there, and you know going this way, you're fine. You can see a few stars, or vice versa, and you're good because you'll still describe an arc. It'll take 3 images, like in this case, 1, 2, and 3 maybe. Then it'll figure out that, oh, it's out here. I need to be somewhere else. Then it'll allow you to adjust. So you're good.
I think it suggests it 50 degrees between each image. So you
Yeah.
need something that will describe a 60-degree arc without being hidden by an object.
Yeah. But you can change that angle. It's not fixed. You don't have to, it doesn't have to be 30. You can pick any angle you want.
Yeah, I mean, mine's manual. Bear in mind, I'm using this with my Star Adventurer, so I'm guessing 30 degrees between each image, but like as you said, it's not absolutely not.
Yeah, because you can do a manual slew as well, right? So you don't have to use the thing to do a slew by itself. You can do a manual slew. Sorry, I don't have a screen where it's got the manual slew, but yeah, there is an option to do a manual slew. So
yeah,
so you can move the scope around as much as you want. So basically, you move it wherever you feel, as long as you don't change the you just move it around the deck, RA axis. Don't change anything else. You're good. Any questions? Keith, you're good?
Yeah, I understand that. I can see Polaris, but the trees are rapidly getting towards it. And I don't know how much longer for. That's the issue.
Yeah, because you don't need to see Polaris at all, because you're not taking a picture at Polaris.
No, but I can see above it. So
yeah,
that would solve that. Is there any limitation on how far that circle can be? I mean, is it
no? There's no
10
limitation
degrees,
at
20,
all.
30?
No, there's no limitation at all.
Okay, just as long as it's pointing north.
It'll just describe bigger and bigger arcs, right?
Yeah. So as long as it's pointing north,
correct.
It's fine. Okay.
Yeah. I don't know whether the theory works even if you point it south, but yeah, by logic, it should work with bigger and bigger arcs.
I'm assuming it's taking images along the
along that arc, right?
So along the track of the stars anyway, and just computes where certain patterns should be. Yeah.
It says, okay, I can see this one here, so let's go back to that image there, right? So it takes a picture there, figures out, okay, it's here, then goes 30, takes a picture there, takes a picture there, and then says, right, all of these point there.
Yeah, very useful. Although after Dave Boddington had a go at me, I have learned to get on my knees and look through the polar scope.
Should you be recording that?
Yeah, and the option there is you could use the what's that, the 90-degree or the 45-degree, the what's it called, the mirror thingy.
The diagonal.
The
Yeah,
prism.
you can have
Yeah,
a
the
diagonal.
diagonal. Yes.
Yeah.
You could attach a diagonal to your polar scope, and then hopefully you won't have to bend as much.
Funny enough, I found it quite comforting to get on your knees and crawl around your front drive. So
You can pray for fine weather while you're down there.
And to answer your other question, Keith, so if you see this little yellow marker there,
yeah,
that's where my home position or park position is. It's not on Polaris, it's somewhere there.
right.
Do you have a feel for whether the accuracy, the polar alignment accuracy, increases with the radial spatial distance from Polaris, or does it not really make any
it should. I think it should. Because the closer you are, the arc is tighter, right? So I think the accuracy should be better here than out there, is my guess. Which is why if you see the advice, they say try and get the star close to Earth.
Okay.
But yeah,
The interesting thing I found was that it actually tells you what your polar error is as you do the adjustment.
correct.
So you can run it, you can iterate it more than once, but you know, when you're doing the final twiddling of the azimuth and altitude knobs, it tells you how close to the pole you are. So if you can kind of decide how much time you want to fiddle depending on your focal length and your exposure time and stuff. So if you only want a rough polar alignment, you can do it really in you know, less than a minute.
So it gives you real time feedback as you're adjusting the.
Yeah, it does.
Correct, it does.
Yeah,
Okay.
it continually takes pictures as you move the knobs on your mount, and gives you real time feedback.
Yeah,
with
so
an absolute
these
measurement.
vectors will keep moving as you.
So you can see it. You can see you've got it nice and close, and then as you tighten up the locking nuts, you can see it go miles off again.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
just what you want.
Yeah, but at least you can then predict how far off you need to be before you hit the lock nut, and then
because
you know,
that's always the pain with mine.
yeah, it's the same with all mounts, I think, Dave.
Yeah, even expensive ones. I think it's they're bane. The RA adjustment seems to be quite good, but the deck always seems to be really troublesome.
Yeah, and was it mentioning a couple of weeks back is making a motor driven version, really high gear, so that once it's stopped, you won't manually move it very easily at all by knocking it, but and then you just drive it there and that's it, holds itself there.
Yeah, attach a gyroscope or something, isn't it, Dave?
Yeah,
it stays there.
Well, yeah, if you want a full solid state gimbal system, but no, I mean, in terms of actually, instead of having manually controlled knobs, you actually have a driven, geared and driven axes for your actual mount itself, not just your RA and that afterwards, but for the actual.
Why not?
Yeah.
You also need zero slop in the gears, though.
Well, you could do it with
tooth belt.
sprung counter springs. You find that on some systems they have two sets of cogs make up a single cog wheel, and they're sprung against each other.
No. Use belts.
Or belts.
Rowan belts.
Yeah.
You could do lots of things. Any more questions? Shall I move on?
Go for it.
Mhm.
Okay, let's look at the good old capture module. So you choose your camera there. You can choose your filter wheel, and you can, if your camera's got a cooling stuff, you can switch it on, set a temperature you want to achieve. Then you've got the exposure settings, how many images you want to take, which filter you want to use, delay between images, format is fixed, it fits, although it gives a pull down. You can't choose anything else, it fits. Type of image, I guess, is so whether it's lights, darks, flats, all those kind of things. The gain of the camera, the offset, the frame corners, and the size of your sensor. So you can either type it here, or there is another screen where all the indie drivers have got all these data. So as soon as you've chosen the camera there, it'll pick up the right pixel stuff. You can choose the binning that you want.
Just
And
one comment there, Pramod.
Mhm.
Although you said fits is fixed,
Yeah,
it does depend on what camera you pick.
yeah, I'm guessing
That's-
you've got the DSLR, it allows
Yeah.
you RAW, right?
It'll allow you RAW, and then you pick the ISO.
Correct.
Yeah.
But for most other cameras, it just sticks to fits. You can't change
Yeah.
anything else.
Sure.
Then you've got these areas. We'll come to this later. So, and then in the filter thing, if you click that button, you can basically adjust all these lovely parameters to alter the focus automatically, depending on which filter you've got. So like it says here, set a relative filter focus offset in steps. So I'm not very expert with this one because one, I don't have filters. So this is all theory for me. But yes, you could do all that. You could lock a filter for it. You can ask it to autofocus. If when you change to that filter, you could put that for every one of these. And this will be applied wherever filters are used across EKOS. Any questions there? Then you've got this little button there, which allows you to, so as soon as you pick darks or flats, then this button gets highlighted. So you can select all these options, and you've got these durations for flats as well. So either manual, or you can set an ADU and it will automatically compute all the stuff and start taking images. So that's the other option there. Then if you've got a rotator or even a manual rotator, I've got a simulator there. It allows you to basically set all these parameters, and it will automatically, if you've got a lovely rotator, it will automatically rotate it to the angle that you've commanded here. Then down here, you've got all these limits that you can set. So in terms of focus, you say autofocus if the HFR goes beyond X pixels. If the temperature changes more than X number of degrees, refocus every 60 minutes, whatever, you can choose all these parameters. Same goes for guiding. You can, so in my case, I normally tick both these and I set it to 2 arc seconds, which is the default. So if my guiding deviation goes beyond that, it stops all my imaging. Any questions? No? Okay, now this, I guess, explains. So what happens is when you set all these parameters, right, and then you click the plus button, it creates one line there. So set another set of parameters, press the plus button, you'll get the second one there. So in this case, I've got 2. So a luminance filter, 30 seconds. I've asked for 5 exposures. Same goes for H alpha, 5 exposures. Then when I press the save button, this whole, whatever I've discussed so far, gets stored into a sequence file. Then we can just load the sequence file and run it off. So these buttons here, you can load the sequence file, you can edit it, you can do all those wonderful things. And that becomes a sequence. So when you run the sequence effectively, it will do this 5, do these 5, and then stop. So these buttons here help you just take a single snapshot, looping, and this is for a live video. So you could do all these as well.
One question there, if I can.
Yeah.
When you set up for your flat requirements, and I noticed you in your example there, you've got the flat device as a manual. Yeah, there. I'm assuming then when you run your sequence and it gets to that, it pauses and waits for you to do it.
It gives you a reminder to say,
go and do it, and then carry on.
Do it. Yes.
So you have to manually. It's like a manual pause.
It's a manual pause. Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Great. That's what I assumed. I just thought I'd check.
No, that's what it does.
Thank you.
Then you've got what they call a docs library. So you can build a docs library, and it stores it with the EKOS. So it's got, you can set expiry dates, how long you want the docs library to remain. You can create defect maps, and it will create the masters as well. What it's used for is to, once you create the docs library, it's used for when you do aligning. So wherever it does a capture, it makes use of the docs library to sort of improve your images, both for display purposes here, it not for storage, but for display and any guiding and alignment, it'll use the docs library. Any questions?
Well, that implies it's only working for the guide camera.
No, it can be using for the alignment as well, right? So
yeah, but if you're aligning with your main camera, your dark library should be different from your guiding camera.
You can define one for each.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay. Yep. All right. Fine.
Any questions? Then coming to, I guess this is the area which confuses a lot of people, is this bit here. So is the directories, right? So this is the local directory. So when they mean local, it means local to KStars. So where KStars is running. And this is the folder where the Indie server is running. That's the remote guy. So in the case of option 1, which we talked about earlier, where everything is running off the Raspberry Pi, the local folder is it. So in my case, if I want to store the images on the Raspberry Pi, then I pick this and I change this option and I say store it remotely. So in which case, even though KStars is running on my system, I can get the images to be stored on this folder on the Raspberry Pi. And there is an option called both as well in this pull down. So in which case it'll store a copy there, a copy on my local drive.
And local can be to a USB stick, can it?
It can be anywhere as long as it's a drive which it can access. Done. You give the path. If it can access the path, it's there. So for instance, on the Raspberry Pi, I think USB drives come up under /dev/SDA1. And then when you mount it, it comes as under /media and then the name of the drive. So if you've got your drive has got a name, should give you a name, something like this. I've never had to use it, but this is for Linux buffs. I just picked it off from some forum. And then this is a command, a Linux command. I'm no Linux expert, but I'm told that if you do df, which is disk free with -h, it should list all the drives and it should show you all the. So it will have two columns, one showing this one and the second column showing that one. So if you've got multiple things hanging off your Raspberry Pi, you should be able to see all of them. Then comes the bit about where these are stored, right? So where they are stored is obviously they hang off this directory. So if you give a name for the target, so in this case, by default, what happens is when you choose an image on the KStar screen and say, go there, you slew the telescope there, it picks up the name of that object and automatically populates that one there. But it's not hard and fast. You can rename it. So if you don't like NGC 3845, whatever, you might want to rename it and call it whatever you want. So that's fine. So when that happens, and then you start the capture, it will create a folder under this. So in this case, if I called it M31, it'll create a folder called M31. It'll create a subfolder light. And then under that, it will create. So in my case, where I picked up these two, right? So I said luminance and H alpha. So it will create two subfolders there and then put all the FITS files in the respective folders. Any questions? Perfect. So coming to framing now. Various options are available in there. One is what we talked about earlier, right? The rotation. So the only bit I would have loved to see is ability to rotate it here on screen and not fiddle with these numbers there. But in my case, it's a manual rotator anyway. So what you do is you rotate your camera, take another image, and it will figure out, or rather you plate solve. So it figures out what the rotation is, and then it will give you a new, this solver image will turn. So you know exactly what kind of image you're trying to go for. So that's a simple one in my case. Or if you know the value you want, so like in this case, you have just set 30, and then you say sync the FOV with the PA. So in which case you've got this nice orange guy who comes up. That's 30 degrees to whatever it is at the moment. And then you can rotate your camera slowly until the two match. So that's what you can do. And then this is a handy one as well. So wherever you see this nice little, almost like a target thing, I couldn't capture the bit there because it shows up as a red crosshair on your screen. So it appears in your fits viewer, it appears in wherever you can see images. There are several screens where it appears. So wherever you see this, you can basically, let's say you give the target of M31, right? And then it'll put M31 dead center there. But you want it to not center it there, you want to center there, for instance. All you have to do is click that guy, put the cursor there and say click. It'll say, shall I slew to that point? And that will become the center for your image. So this and this as a combination should allow you to get a nicely framed image. So for instance, I was struggling the other night to, when it was M108, I was trying to image. It would never center to where I wanted it to. So I just had to pick a point and say, right, I want it to go there. That's where I want my center. Any questions? Perfect. Now comes sequences, right? So we said we are storing as a sequence. So what I do is, when do you want to change the sequence? Is either you create a sequence for every object you image, or you are in a situation like, for instance, my case, I have figured out that I tend to use certain combinations all the time. So if it is a nebula, then I know I'm going to go for a certain combination of duration, a gain, and an offset. So I store 3 or 4 sets of these files and name them accordingly. So like in this case, I could call it nebula 30 seconds with a gain of 50, with a 20 offset, whatever, right? And then I keep these. So when I choose a nebula, then I say, okay, get me that one. And off I go. So it's a straightforward, it's an XML file. And so you just take one first, then edit it as you please. So in this case, it's pretty readable. Don't need a technical brain to do this. So the exposure is there, the binning is there, and all these here, the deviation enabled, false, true, all those are from the bottom of the screen, which I said, right? So if this is true, then guiding will be forced on 2 arc seconds. Same goes for all these up here. So automatically, if you've set the parameters right, all these will get preset for you. And I generally pick up the camera there, so filter wheel and so on. So once I've taken one set, I save this and reuse to create sequences for the other one.
Just a comment there, for those who are used to SG Pro, you can go into SG Pro anytime, day or night, and go and create a sequence and save it. What slightly frustrated me the first time I tried this is you can't do that with EKOS unless you are connected to the camera.
No.
I think that's the only reason why you'd go in and do this manual text editing.
Yeah. So you could do this, right? So
Yeah.
You run the simulators, generate this file, and then use the file. Straightforward. You just edit it. You don't need any equipment connected. That's one way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, what I guess what I would do is to connect it all to the equipment the first time.
Yeah,
create
that's one way to do
a
it.
sequence,
Yes.
and then subsequently you
Correct.
could do it by text editing the master one.
Yeah. But what
but
I'm
yeah,
saying is once you know how this works,
Yeah.
you can just run the simulators and create your sequences without worrying about what your equipment, because all the equipment here are, that's it, your filter wheel and your CCD. You can figure out the name of these. And I'm not even sure it honors these two. When it picks up the sequence, I'm not, because if it doesn't find the equipment attached, I'm pretty sure it defaults to the whatever is attached. So I think it honors these only when there are multiple equipment connected to the same device. And I haven't seen it because I can pretty much use this script as it stands, and then it's not going to run the simulator. It will connect to the camera.
But it's just for those who've used other sequencing programs, it is it is worthy of note that you can't create a sequence.
Correct.
Using the normal GUI without the equipment being connected for the first time anyway, and then subsequently, like as you said, this is an option for doing it offline, so to speak.
Yeah. And it's a bit like PhD 2, isn't it? So it wants to connect before it can do its what the guiding assistant, all that stuff. So it's in a way similar.
That's true. You can't change some of the parameters in PhD 2 offline. You have to be connected to the camera.
So something similar. But yes, this one for the non-techie people, it's a bit hard, and which is what I'm hoping someday they'll fix it and we'll have a chance to do all this offline. But so far, no. Any questions? No. Perfect. Now, so that leads us straight to scheduler. People still have the appetite for going through this?
Oh, yes.
Okay. So we have created a sequence. We've learned how to do that. Now comes the fun part. We schedule this in. So the way we do it is plain and simple. So go to the scheduler, click this nice search button. It should pop up a screen with the objects. You just type the name of the object. It will pick up the array and the deck of that object, populate it there, give you the name there. You can edit the name. It's not, the target is not fixed. It just gives you the name. You can change it. All it's picking up is the array and the deck. And then you can specify a rotation. You pick the sequence you like. And then you choose a priority for it. Then you click these buttons here. So whether you want it to track. Normally, if you've got a autofocuser, you would click this. In my case, I don't, so I disable that one. So I've got this, this, and this connected. And you set all the parameters down here. So how quickly you want it to start. When do you want it to start? You want an altitude greater than something. You want to stay X number of degrees away from the moon. I use a weather API. So I click that button. So if the weather API says clouds, it will stop. And then you click the twilight to prevent it from starting too early. And then if you've defined an artificial horizon on K-stars, it will honor that and wait for it to go above the artificial horizon before it starts imaging those pieces. And same here for the completion conditions. And then once you've chosen all this, you just, similar to the sequence, right? So you just click the plus button and it'll add one row. So in this case, what I've done is I've clicked Q, right? So M1, I clicked, ran a few sequences, it finished. So that's how it will show up. Then I picked comma Bernices or Berenices, and then that's the second one. And then I've basically created another set of other sequence for darks and flats. So that's got 5 of each, similar to what done before, right? So, and that's the third guy. So it will, depending on the priority, right? Automatically what it chooses is which one rises first. So it will automatically schedule it in that order. So in this case, obviously it says, okay, M1 I can see first, therefore it will put it to the top. And this one, it says will rise much later, so I'm going to schedule it much later. And that it automatically does. But if you, let's say you've got 2 objects which are similar and you have a particular choice, then you can change the priority and you can do based on that. So, and then you've got that. So, and then what this does is, let's say last time you stopped at a certain point and you wanted to start exactly there, or someone has sent you an image which you like and you want to take a picture from that point. So then you say, I've got a FITS file here, load it, plate solve, and move my mount to that point and start taking the images. So that's what that is used for.
If I can ask before you move on the set you've got shown, you've got scores 0, 65 and 1000. What's that telling you?
I am not entirely clear about what that is. I need to figure out what that score does. I'm sure it has some value, but I haven't figured out.
Is it the priority multiplied by, some other, so some numbers, so it comes up with a score and it runs through in score order or something?
No idea. Because I Googled around, I couldn't find anywhere which explained this, but I'm sure it's there somewhere. But yes, you could do this. And what it does is for each line there, you've got, or each line within the sequence there, it's going to do all these in sequence, which I think we covered off last time. And then, of course, last but not least, you can save all these as a schedule. So that's for people like me who maybe we've got an aborted schedule and I want to restart 15 days later. Obviously, I'm not having my laptop and everything else running, in which case I just save it, come back on that day, pick up, load the schedule, and all these get pre-populated. And then I click the run button and off it goes from where it stopped. But if you've got the scheduler running and all your equipment, like for people who've got a dome and so on, and they've got this running, it will automatically pick the next available slot, look at whether all these parameters are fine, and then it will run. And same, you can got stuff here to start up, shut down. All these are there as well. So it can do a whole bunch of things there. You can write your own scripts for anything else which is not standard. So yeah, it's up to you. Any questions?
I thought John was going to ask what language can you write the scripts in?
I think you can write it in pretty much any language.
What we need is
Muted,
what
John.
you need is a graphical interface.
I just need a rest from programming for a while.
Yeah, you can write.
can have-
Yeah, because I think you can write as Python. You can write it as shell scripts. You can write anything that will run off your Raspberry Pi in this case. So
It's a really good feature that external scriptability is coming to more and more products. It does make things very flexible.
yeah, and coming back to this one as well, right? So out here, you've got a scripts manager. So you can add scripts there as well. So the scripts there basically cover off what to do before you capture, during the capture, after the capture, and so on. So you could run other events from your scripts which get triggered off as and when you do a capture.
Make the T every 10 frames or whatever.
Yeah, whatever. Or remind you to make the T every 10 frames. Yeah, fine. Okay, and I think the latest update that has been made just yesterday or day before, it's still not out. I think they're still testing it, is something called a greedy scheduler. I'm waiting to see what that does.
As a biscuit as well as the tea.
Yeah, apparently this is the lazy one. So they've got a greedy one where you can prioritize and you can say, right, I want to force this guy to go. I don't know what exactly it's doing, but I've just been reading up on the forums. They've developed something. So coming to what I was talking about, right? So the two sequences. So effectively what I created was two sequences. So one is the ducks and the flats. So you can see two lines there for the ducks and the flats. And then you've got the one which you've already covered. So both those sequences effectively are there. So depending on which line you selected, it's going to show you what all the parameters are for that line. So because I've selected that one, it's saying that's the sequence. That's it.
Thanks, Pramod.
Very good, thank you.
Yeah, as a matter of interest, I mean, I haven't used the scheduler yet because I've been creating sequences with, you know, lights, darks, and flats all within the sequence, and I've only ever been looking at one object a night. So if you're only going to do that and you're not worried about starting and stopping before or after twilight or any of those things, you don't need to use the scheduler. You can just create a sequence and just run it, you know, on the night sort of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's fairly intuitive once you've worked your way around it, and my experience with it so far is pretty good.
Yeah, it looks pretty comprehensive.
It's the only reason I used to use the scheduler in the past, because I wasn't guiding, right? So what helped me there was using the scheduler allowed me to align every 10 images or whatever. So basically
to a library image.
No. So basically first time you do an align, right? So the object is dead center. There's no guiding, right? So there might be a slight drift. So after about 10, 15 images, you might find the object is slightly gone off center.
Right.
So basically I run the alignment every 10 or 15 images. So then it's brought back to the center after every 15, 20 images.
Okay.
And then it starts again. So once you've got guiding and so on, then you don't need that much reliance on those scheduler or single images, like you said, because all the parameters are there pretty much. Because only additional bit is the alignment, right? So that bit you have to do it all by when you do the go-to manually, whereas putting it to the scheduler means you don't have to do the go-to manually, right? So it is going to do the go-to manually automatically.
Yeah, okay, guess. Yeah, I haven't used it with a go-to mount, so that's yeah, I see what you're saying.
I couldn't find any Raspberry Pis in stock anywhere.
Oh.
That was the problem.
But we did establish it will run on even the Raspberry Pi 3, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it runs on relatively low spec Raspberry Pis. I mean, I just happened to buy the latest one that was in stock, so I got 4B with a reasonable amount of memory because I thought that would future-proof it. But as you said, I think if you've got an old 3 or earlier knocking about, it'll probably still run.
Yeah, I'm waiting for Mildave to.
I was going to ask Mildave if I thought he put his out.
Mine's still safely tucked in the drawer there, Me3B. I've done nothing with it.
Keith, you can borrow it from Mildave and use it.
Yeah, no. Well, I've got another laptop coming from a company. It's a 3-year-old one from a company. It's an i5, so it will that would do. Or I use the one I currently got. And if someone does come and whip it, I don't care.
So they got your images.
That's true. That's true.
Well, if you set the switch right, you'll get 2 copies, won't you? They'll get one and you'll get one.
But, images, you can get them the next day, can't you?
Oh, yeah, easy. Yeah, it's always clear, isn't it?
Yeah.
So what I have learned from just taking some images is you need to take a lot of some images. And yeah, I'm quite interested in the, I haven't done it yet, but to take images one night and then go and take some more images another night. So you're doing the rotation and everything. And
that's really where plate solving and any need to rotate really comes into its own.
Yeah.
So that was the point that Pramod was saying about that loading up a file to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So load up a previous file and
that's right.
And then use that to take your new images. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, Nina can do that, so I'm happy with that. But yeah, I couldn't find. I did look for Raspberry Pi, but I couldn't get anything. And even the odd one that said it had stock, when you phoned them up, they didn't have any.
Right.
Talking about rotation, do people generally, most of the time, try to align for sort of north, south, east, west, or is it sort of mostly an artistic angle that you think this object looks best like this, or maybe that's the only way I can get the guide star?
When you have a small sensor, you tend to have to sometimes move it around a bit. So
yeah, like in my case, right? So it's the ASI 224. So if I want to image a galaxy and then it goes lengthwise across it, then I have to rotate. Otherwise, I've got a cross section of the galaxy.
Yeah, we're not all, us that are into just getting into it. Unlike you guys that are, you know, doing it for years, and you sort of upped your equipment from what you initially get. But Dave Body's right. What I need is a wider field of view.
Yeah.
You need a smaller telescope.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's definitely the cheapest way of doing it.
Yeah, you're probably you're right.
Definitely, yeah.
And you don't reintroduce balancing issues as well by keep rotating and throwing your balance off.
Advantages of a small telescope.
Yep, short focal length is good, definitely.
Particularly with the small pixels you get now.
Yeah, that's the other issue. Yeah. Everything is very small pixels now, so you end up with small sensor size. In there, but I've been looking at how I can build a shelter. Is probably the better word, not a dome or anything. A shelter. So I've been looking at some designs, and then how to mechanically make them work and waterproof. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah, we can. I'm pretty certain. I mean, I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah,
just sketching. You can have a fairly shallow box with a roof that basically clamshells up and down. So so it's only got to be, by the time the telescope's on its side in a park position.
That's right.
You're not talking about a huge shelter type thing. So
yeah,
you should join forces with Shane, because he wants to do something very similar.
Does he?
He wants to build an enclosure for the scope, so he doesn't have to put it up and take it down all the time.
So well, that's the idea. Yeah, it is because it still takes a while to do every time you do it, and then every other time you do it, you've got some sort of issue that you didn't have the last time. So
correct.
I noticed a couple of things just recently. One is that I believe Cyril's just brought out version 1.0, which sounds
yeah, it has
handy.
long by. Came out in Jan, I think.
Yeah, oh, right. A bit out of date then. And the other thing I was quite intrigued by is that people are beginning to start to use TIFFs as the output format, where they're using the description field in the TIFF to store the FITS header, which I thought was quite clever. And that way it can compress the file using lossless compression, which seems to me like a big advantage over a FITS file. And any editor can open it. So it sounded like a neat idea.
Yeah. And did you see that post by the, what's the name? The Richard chap, I think. Or Vincent, the guy who came on our call to demo Cyril. So he's put a post out about, he believes that the flat darks are a waste. So he's come up with some theory about flat darks and so on. He says we don't need them.
Yeah, I can understand there's flat darks are going to have a fairly minimal difference. You'd probably need to apply an offset to the flat, otherwise you're going to get all sorts of strange errors. But as long as the offset's correct, then because a flat is so bright, then small levels of hot pixels probably won't make that much difference, especially with the CMOS cameras of today. So I can see where he's coming from. the using the flat darks probably only has a small improvement rather than a huge, massive one.
He's written a full-fledged paper on that. So,
but you'd still need to apply the correct offset, otherwise you get all sorts of strange errors. You'll get over or under corrections if you don't.
Yeah, and if you've got amp glow on the CMOS, you'll still see that. So you still, I mean, there was a long thread on Stargazer's Lounge. Was that the same chap who wrote it?
I'm not sure he's there on Stargazer's Lounge at all.
There was a long thread on that about 2 or 3 months ago about not using.
No. This guy is not on the Stargazer's Lounge at all. I think he's on Cloudy Nights and he's on the Cyril channel forum. That's it. He's not anywhere else.
I can see that sky glow could be a real, amp glow could be a real issue. So yes, that's an interesting point.
There's another thing I came across. I mean, there's been a lot of talk about low short time exposures on CMOS cameras not being terribly good for some reason, not really being stable. And then I saw something on the Starlight Express forum yesterday where Terry Platt said it could be because the timers use the Windows timer, which below about 2 or 3 seconds is just junk, he said. So in the Starlight Express drivers, they've got their own timer that works below about 2 or 3 seconds to give accurate exposures. And above that, it switches onto the Windows timer. So it could be the same thing that's happening.
Right. Yeah. Interesting. Yes, we had all sorts of timing challenges when we were doing the Move Debris satellite project.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
It rings true, doesn't it?
Yep.
Yeah, and we've discovered that really doing everything ourselves turned out to be the best.
What's that old adage?
Yeah.
So is anyone here on this group who uses Cyril and has multiple filters?
Nope.
Not yet.
Because I'm dying to try out the pixel math in Cyril. But yeah, obviously I can't do much with it.
Or the dark pixel map?
No,
Pixel maths.
Oh, sorry, pixel math.
As in Pix Insights, Pixel Math. I presume it's similar.
Yeah, similar.
Have you got a filter wheel, Pramod?
No, I don't have any of those things. No filter wheel, no filters, no nothing. Yes, I've got one filter, which is the UV IR cut one, but that's about it. That's the next purchase, Bob. Get one of those L Enhance or L whatever.
I'll have to have a word with Nick, see if he's got any kicking around in his cupboards. You know, the True Tech filter wheel.
Yeah, okay. Mono doesn't interest me at the moment. So I'm happy to stick with a colour.
Steady, John, steady.
I'm beginning to suspect.
Oh no!
But
we turn the recording off so you can flame each other.
that if you are doing LI